Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top story tonight on Gravitas focuses on the new nuclear arms race, a dangerous one with far-reaching implications. What are things looking like? What exactly has Russia's Sergei Lavrov said? We decode all that and more for you in just a bit. And here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. A new virus is on the prowl in China. What do we know about it? How concerning is the situation really? How concerned should you be? We tell you all that you need to know. South Korea is grappling with its worst air disaster following that crash that claimed 179 lives. We tell you about the questions left behind. Former US President Jimmy Carter is no more. We take you to the Puri village located in Gurugram district of India's Haryana, which holds a lot of significance and a unique place. We tell you all about it in just a bit. Here's a look at our top story. Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about the new nuclear arms race. Threatening global stability, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, in fact, has made it clear that the country is set to abandon a moratorium on deploying intermediate and shorter range nuclear missiles. What's the catalyst, you ask? According to Lavrov, the United States planned deployment of similar weapons across various regions. Now, Russia's move directly endangers the last remnants of a Cold War-era arms control framework, in fact, fueling fears of a fresh nuclear arms race among countries such as the US, Russia, China. Before we go any further, it's important to first understand how much nuclear arsenal the countries possess. And just to put this into perspective, with Lavrov's statements, both Russia and the US have more than 5,000 nuclear warheads each. Together, they dominate the nuclear landscape, controlling 90% of global nuclear arsenals. China, while lagging way behind with around 600 warheads, is rapidly modernizing and expanding its arsenal. Like we told you early this month, according to a Pentagon report, China has added more than 100 warheads in the past year alone, and the PLA is projected to possess over 1,000 warheads by 2030. So any kind of declaration that opposes arms control is alarming, not just for the countries involved, but for the entire world that may be engulfed in a nuclear chain reaction, posing catastrophic consequences. As per reports, Lavrov justified the policy shift, stating that the US has arrogantly ignored warnings from Russia and China and has effectively initiated the deployment of such weapons in various parts of the world. The statement perhaps highlighting the worsening relationship between Washington and Moscow, which, by their own admission, is now at its lowest point since the Cold War. The US plans to install missiles in Germany by 2026. These long-range missiles reportedly include SM-6, Tomahawk, and the developmental hypersonic weapons, which reportedly have significantly longer ranges than current land-based fires in Europe. As per reports, the collapse of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 2019 has been a precursor to these developments, signed in 1987 by then US President Ronald Reagan and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. The INF Treaty not just eliminated the production of an entire class of nuclear weapons, but also marked the first time the superpowers had agreed to reduce their nuclear arsenals. Since then, it reportedly served as a major foundation for global arms control. But in 2018, then President Donald Trump announced his intention to actually withdraw from the pact, citing alleged Russian violations and concerns over China's missile capabilities, with Moscow denying the accusations and dismissing them as a pretext for US withdrawal. Russia, in response, imposed its own moratorium on the development of missiles banned under the INF Treaty. These basically included ground-based ballistic and cruise missiles with ranges of 500 to 5,500 kilometers. But now that restraint is gone. Lavrov made it clear the moratorium is quote-unquote no longer practically viable and will have to be abandoned, perhaps signaling a dangerous new future where tit-for-tat nuclear missile deployments and production could become the norm. Now, in practical terms, this means Russia could deploy these weapons deeper in its Baltic enclave of Kaliningrad, something which was barred in the moratorium and could directly threaten the security of Europe. You see, Russian Iskander missiles are already stationed in Kaliningrad and Belarus, while longer-range weapons like the Orishnik ballistic missile could be stationed deeper in Russian territory, which basically makes much of Europe in its range. The US, in fact, has reportedly already tested missiles with capabilities similar to those banned by the INF Treaty. So will Russia initiate countermeasures is the immediate question, further fueling the nuclear arms race. And what about China, for that matter? While its nuclear arsenal is significantly smaller, unlike the US and Russia, Beijing is not a party to treaties like the INF, giving it free rein to develop nuclear missiles, which only further complicates the situation, as the US and Russia may also have to consider China in their strategic calculations. The implications of Russia abandoning its unilateral missile moratorium are profound. An unchecked nuclear arms race raises the likelihood of miscalculation, with the pursuit of superiority creating a precarious balance where one misstep could lead to catastrophic consequences. Not just that, the crumbling of the arms control agreement signaling a dangerous shift. Treaties like the INF and New START were basically designed to prevent precisely this scenario. New START, as it's called, is a nuclear arms reduction treaty signed between the US and Russia that came into effect in 2011. And with the New START treaty set to expire in 2026 and reportedly no strategic dialogue on the horizon, Russia, the US, and the world face the prospect of a complete collapse in arms control frameworks. Without a commitment to renewed dialogue and arms control, the world may be hurtling towards an unprecedented era of nuclear competition, and the stakes could not be higher. One misstep, miscalculation, or an impulsive decision could actually leave millions around the world vulnerable to the devastating consequences of a nuclear war. And just a few days to go as far as Joe Biden's term as the President of the United States is concerned, and he has unrolled another aid package for Ukraine. The White House saying that Biden announced a fresh package of nearly $2.5 billion in aid to Ukraine for its defense against Russian aggression. Biden said that he is proud to announce almost $2.5 billion in security aid to Ukraine as the Ukrainian people continue to defend their independence and freedom from Russian aggression. Now, in his statement on U.S. support for Ukraine, Biden stated that the aid includes an additional $1.25 billion drawdown package for the Ukrainian military and a $1.22 billion Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative package. Washington has committed billions of dollars in aid for Ukraine since the war between Moscow and Kiev started. However, it is uncertain if the aid will continue at that level under Donald Trump, who will make a comeback to the White House on the 20th of January. And shifting our focus now to some interesting details coming in from the Pentagon's 2024 report on China's military development. The report, Military and Security Developments Involving the People's Republic of China, basically highlights how China is surging ahead as far as naval power is concerned. That's one of the key takeaways, perhaps leaving America grappling with an industrial and strategic disadvantage. You see, the Pentagon reiterated that China's Navy, already the largest in the world, is expanding at an unprecedented rate with 370 ships and submarines. Currently, the fleet is projected to grow to 395 by 2025 and 435 by 2030. And this expansion is not just about numbers, you see. It's also a major reflection of China's massive shipbuilding capacity. As per reports, leaked US Navy intelligence estimating China's shipbuilding output to be 232 times greater than America's. Just think about that. For every vessel the United States produces, China churns out 232. The Pentagon's report further underscoring the sophistication of China's naval fleet. Among the 370 ships, over 140 are major surface combatants equipped with modern multi-mission capabilities. And these include advanced guided missile cruisers, destroyers, frigates. Now, this is not just any primitive navy, of course. It's perhaps a navy designed for precision strikes and long-term missions. The report further highlighting the construction of China's new amphibious assault ship, and that the country has already started the construction of a landing helicopter assault ship equipped with electromagnetic catapults for UAVs. While the country's third aircraft carrier, the Fujian, has entered sea trials and is expected to be operational by 2025. Let's just compare this with the state of American shipbuilding. As per reports, China's shipyards boast a capacity exceeding 23.2 million tons compared to less than 100,000 tons for the United States. Reportedly, the capabilities of US shipyards have seen a downfall since the 1980s. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan reportedly called this decline a quote-unquote generational project to fix, citing a weakened industrial base and the loss of skilled labor as critical challenges. Raja Krishnamurthy, a member of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, put it bluntly. Early this month, he said that for every ocean-going vessel the US builds, China builds 359. Let that sink in. An imbalance that in a way invites aggression, according to Krishnamurthy, and leaves America vulnerable in a future conflict with China. The Pentagon's report does not just outline China's growing naval prowess, it also highlights the strategic leverage that it provides. As per the report, Chinese naval vessels are increasingly conducting operations in foreign exclusive economic zones, challenging international norms and asserting dominance, projecting power into the waters of nations like the US, the Philippines, Australia, Vietnam, Malaysia. What does all of this mean for America? Is it a wake-up call? Even worse than that, perhaps? Does this mean that it's lost out on crucial time already? According to experts, strengthening the US shipbuilding industry requires investment, policy changes, and a commitment to rebuilding the industrial base. But the clock is ticking, and for America, every move counts right now. Meanwhile, a scathing report from the US Helsinki Commission accuses Russia of launching hybrid attacks on NATO territory. It basically claims that since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, sabotage operations across North America and Europe have intensified. If true, how has Moscow managed to target the NATO and the West single-handedly, despite severe sanctions? Our next report, getting you the complete story.
Putin is allegedly waging a shadow war in UK, Europe and the US. A report by the US Helsinki Commission describes how Russia has been orchestrating on the West's critical infrastructure attacks, violence campaigns, weaponized migration and election interference and information campaigns. To visualize the breadth of the Kremlin's efforts, officials have mapped nearly 150 hybrid operations it says have been executed in NATO territory. But why would Moscow target NATO? To answer this question, the report says Russia's active measures against NATO countries are calculated efforts to undermine democratic values, sow distrust within free societies, and destabilize the alliance's resolved unity. It says NATO represents a direct obstacle to Moscow's imperial ambitions. The report has identified hybrid warfare attacks on critical infrastructure attributed and suspected of Russia. This includes GPS signal jams, cyber attacks on hospitals, railway disruptions, and other sabotage on infrastructure systems. The Helsinki Commission blames Russia for widespread GPS jamming affecting flights across Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Germany, Poland, and the Baltics in 2023. It also held Moscow accountable for jamming of the GPS signal of a plane carrying the British Defence Minister in March this year. A particularly heinous tactic deployed by Russia and Belarus is the weaponization of migrants. In November 2023, Finland closed its border with Russia following a surge of border crossings believed to be instigated by Russia. In the summer of 2024, Poland saw a surge to nearly 400 illegal border crossings a day. The report alleges election interference is a hallmark of Russia's hybrid warfare. Spreading false narratives and funding candidates sympathetic to Moscow are ubiquitous tactics. In March 2024, Czech and Belgian officials uncovered a massive Russian propaganda network spread across Europe, attempting to influence European Parliament elections, including efforts to bribe EU lawmakers to promote Kremlin rhetoric. The report admits that failing to fully support Ukraine's defense only emboldens Russia to continue its hybrid attacks. It says NATO must take the shadow war seriously, treating these operations as real and present threats to the alliance's security, and NATO must take decisive actions to support Ukraine. If this report is accurate, Russia is capable of challenging this formidable alliance, despite facing crippling sanctions. Reports say Moscow has been hit with over 22,000 sanctions from Western nations, making it the most sanctioned country in the world. These sanctions extend beyond individuals and firms, including Russia's removal from the SWIFT payment system. However, Russia has successfully bypassed these restrictions through innovation, leaving NATO dismayed. Experts argue that the so-called powerful US-led bloc is now ineffective and merely playing catch-up. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
On to South Korea now, which is grappling with its worst air disaster as the Boeing crash claimed 179 lives at Muan International Airport. The incident marks the deadliest plane crash worldwide in 6 years, triggering immediate safety concerns and scrutiny of both airport infrastructure and Boeing's troubled legacy. Our next story getting you all the details.
It is the world's deadliest plane crash in 6 years. Boeing 737-800 belly lands and skids off the end of the runway at Muan International Airport. These are the terrifying images of the Jeju Air Flight 2216 erupting in a fireball as it slammed into a wall. The plane was carrying 181 people from Thailand to South Korea. Only 2 survived the inferno. As black boxes are being scrutinized, but flyers are scared. A second Jeju Air flight from Seoul was forced to return after encountering a landing gear problem. Jeju Air says that about 68,000 flight reservations have been cancelled.
Fear and sadness come together, and honestly, it's the end-of-year holiday season now. Just last week, I flew to Jeju Island using that same airline, so perhaps that's why this feels so much more real and terrifying to me. The fear has been overwhelming, and I've been feeling down and scared all weekend, even up until now.
It's hard to imagine that an accident like this could happen to me just by taking a flight. But with this incident, I can't help but feel worried and cautious about flying in the future.
Bird strikes can cause fires inside the plane's engines, damaging critical systems which can render the landing gear inoperable, meaning the wheels don't come out to facilitate a smooth landing. Many aviation experts are also questioning why there was a wall at the end of the runway in which the plane collided and turned into a fireball.
What we saw was, during the video of this landing, was we saw the aircraft being put down beautifully with wings perfectly level. It was sliding on its belly. It was going very fast because the pilot couldn't get the flaps down, possibly because the hydraulics had failed after a bird strike. But anyway, he had to land particularly fast. That's why the aircraft went over the end of the runway.
New Year celebrations across South Korea have been cancelled as the country observes 7 days of national mourning following the crash. The crash adds another dark chapter to Boeing's troubled history, following the controversial 737 MAX disasters that claimed 346 lives and cost the company $23 billion, while ceding market dominance to European rival Airbus. As the cause of the crash remains under investigation, and aviation experts are quick to distinguish Sunday's incident from the company's earlier safety problems. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And nearly 5 years after the COVID-19 outbreak, China may now have a mystery virus on the prowl. According to reports, China has been battling an outbreak of human metapneumovirus, or HMPV. How dangerous is it? What is known about it? As per the information available so far, HMPV causes symptoms similar to influenza as well as COVID-19. However, unlike the two, it currently does not have any corresponding vaccine. How concerning is that? Let's just first tell you more about what is known. According to experts, HMPV infections rose in mainland China over the past few days. In the northern province in China, reportedly the infection rate has shown an upward trend. On Friday, China's Diseases Control Authority said that it was piloting a monitoring system for pneumonia, whose origin is unknown as of now. The Chinese medical body reportedly also said that cases of some respiratory diseases are expected to rise through the winter. It's reportedly to establish a dedicated system that can help the authorities set up protocols to handle unknown pathogens. Not just that, according to the state broadcaster CCTV, the National Disease Control and Prevention Administration is set to establish a separate procedure for laboratories to report as well as for prevention agencies to verify and handle cases. You see, all of this is happening and is being closely looked at given the backdrop of the COVID-19 mayhem. Responding to this outbreak, the Deputy Director of Taiwan Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, has said that Taiwan is closely monitoring the virus as well. Why is that? As it suspects that the outbreak might also affect Taiwan. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, a leading epidemiologist has recently reportedly said that levels of HMPV remained low even amid the outbreak in mainland China. But what exactly is HMPV and what do we know about it? According to the official of Taiwan CDC, it is a common type of respiratory virus that mainly causes more serious illness in young children and older adults, as well as those with compromised immune systems. In others, the symptoms of this infection are in fact quite similar to those of the common cold. Therefore, symptoms commonly associated with HMPV include cough, fever, nasal congestion, and shortness of breath. However, clinical symptoms of HMPV infection may progress to bronchitis or pneumonia and are similar to other viruses that cause upper and lower respiratory infections. Now, can it turn deadly? According to the Chinese CDC, while the virus usually poses no major risks, those with pre-existing lung conditions like asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, etc., are at a higher risk of severe outcomes. How does it get transmitted? HMPV most likely gets spread from an infected person to others through secretions from coughing and sneezing and close personal contact, such as touching or shaking hands, or even touching parts of the face after touching objects or surfaces which may be contaminated with the virus. I know what you're thinking. Sounds a lot like COVID-19, right? Perhaps sounds like a nightmarish deja vu nobody wants to play out in real life. Well, the similarities are simply hard to miss. However, there is one big difference, a crucial one, that stands out. The fact that HMPV has no vaccine as of now, nor does it have an effective cure. Medical experts, in fact, saying that it's still mostly unknown to the general public, and this makes a difference when it comes to raising awareness surrounding it. You see, it may be purely incidental that almost 5 years after official cases of COVID-19 were first recorded, that China is battling another virus outbreak. However, what happened then and what happens now can be separated by one factor, the factor of transparency. You see, there are several reports, critical accounts, suggesting that China had withheld critical information in the early stages of the COVID-19 outbreak. Not just that, as per investigations that were led post-COVID-19, researchers were said to have isolated and mapped the virus causing COVID-19. This was at least 2 weeks before Beijing revealed details of the virus to the world this time around. Will that change? Can China be expected to take the outbreak of HMPV a lot more seriously? Also, exercise transparency regarding the plausible dangers that the virus may be posing in China and beyond, as well as China's plans to tackle the virus should it turn even more severe in the coming days. Former US President Jimmy Carter is no more. Have you heard about the village of Puri? Puri village, located in India's Gurugram district. It holds a unique place in both local and international contexts. Due to its association with the former American president, it's often called his India connection. WION Siddhant Sibal getting us this report. Take a look.
This place can be any other place in the suburbs of Delhi, with its kacha roads and newly built houses. But this place has been an important milestone in Indo-US ties. This is Puri, named after former US President Jimmy Carter. Originally known as Daulatpur Nasirabad, this village is located in the Gurugram district of Haryana. It was renamed Carter Puri in honor of the 39th United States President Jimmy Carter after his visit to the village on January 3rd in 1978, along with his wife, Rosalind Carter. Old-timers recall his visit fondly, many in their 90s now, while the young mention the stories told by the elders with great interest. How the village became a center of attraction with high security presence. Many say that his visit spurred the development of the village.
There were a lot of government cars that came. The fields were sowed, kacha houses were whitewashed, and there were so many cars. He was also taken to a gas plant. He was made to wear the traditional clothes of our place, like a cap and shirt and a shawl.
10 women at the school in this village did his tika, and other 10 made him wear a traditional shawl. There was nothing here, no lanes and no wells. Everything got built when he came.
Carter's visit was significant because his mother, Lillian Carter, had previously worked in the village in the late 1960s as a member of the Peace Corps, creating a personal connection between the former president and the community. The village celebrated when Carter won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. Carter was the third US president to visit India. His 1978 India visit was aimed at resetting Indo-US ties. During the visit, he held talks with former Indian Prime Minister Morarji Desai, got a public reception at Ram Leela Maidan. But the one that is remembered today is his visit to village Carter Puri. The village is part of the urban sprawl of Gurugram, one of India's rapidly developing regions. It has a history that locals won't forget. The economy of Carter Puri is closely tied to the industrial development of Gurugram. Many residents work in nearby factories, Indian military, and small businesses catering to the local economy.
Carter Puri is named after US President Jimmy Carter. He visited this village, and the people of this village are very proud of not only the visit but the fact that they're named after the President of the United States who visited this village in 1978. And whenever the history of India-US relationship will be talked about, the name of this village will always crop up. With video journalist Dheeraj Patel, Siddhant Sibal for WION in Carter Puri, Haryana.
Shifting focus for now, the Jobar Synagogue, once a revered pilgrimage site for Syrian Jews, is in the spotlight following the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime. The 2,700-year-old synagogue, which was off limits for worshippers during the civil war, is now drawing them in again. But the once thriving Jewish community has dwindled to just 9 members, with its leader warning that their days are numbered. The synagogue is located at the Jobar suburb. Now, this suburb was pounded for years by the Syrian government forces while in the hands of opposition fighters. The civil war in Syria left the synagogue partially destroyed, with the walls and roofs collapsing and artifacts going missing. In fact, a marble sign in Arabic at the gate states that the synagogue was first built 720 years before Christ, with the insurgents overthrowing former President Bashar al-Assad in early December. Jews can now make pilgrimages and pray at the synagogue. The head of the community visited the damaged Jobar Synagogue to assess the situation.
Before the conflict, there was nothing. We were entering normally. Now I am frankly disturbed. I was surprised to see the synagogue like this. God willing, it will be back as it was, but it needs time.
Syria's Jewish community dates back nearly 3,000 years to the time of, in fact, but it faced significant decline since Israel's creation in 1948. The community faced increased tensions and restrictions in Syria, leading many to emigrate to Israel, the United States, or other parts. Once home to around 100,000 Jews, the community has been reduced to just a handful of members, like we said, mostly elderly. According to the head of the community, Only 9 Jews live in Syria, and he hopes that the Jews will now return.
The Jews can come back. We have no problem with religions or anyone. They lived here and all were together. Christians, Jews and Muslims. Nobody was interfered with.
India's space agency ISRO is all set for its final mission of the year 2024. This is the much-awaited space docking experiment. This is a mission that is crucial for India's future space endeavors like Chandrayaan-4 and the Indian Space Station. You see, space docking is a highly sophisticated feat that has been accomplished only by entities from the US, Russia, Europe and China. The Indian-made twin SpaceX satellites, weighing 220 kg each, are to be placed in orbit by the Indian workhorse PSLV rocket. The vehicle is to lift off from the first launch pad of the Indian spaceport Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota from India's southeast coast. The rocket launch is scheduled for 10 p.m. Indian Standard Time tonight, in just a short while from now. Almost 15 minutes after the launch, in fact, the satellites will separate from the rocket. They will be placed in an orbit that is 470 kilometers above planet Earth. Now, in addition to space docking, this mission also carries 24 space experiments developed by ISRO and Indian space startups. After the satellites are ejected, the final stage of the rocket will be used as a platform to host these experiments in space for a couple of months.
Space docking experiment, or SpaceX, which is the most sophisticated space experiment that India will be carrying out in an orbit very close to the Earth. Almost 15 minutes after the 10 p.m. liftoff, these satellites will be hurled into 470 kilometer orbit above the Earth, and from there these satellites will be ejected at a speed of almost 28,000 kilometers per hour, and thereon these satellites will grow further from each other. They'll actually move far apart. They'll be almost 20 kilometers apart as we progress, and over the next 6 to 10 days what will take place is that these satellites will maneuver in such a way autonomously that they reduce the distance between them. They'll initially be 20 kilometers apart and they'll almost come within touching distance over a week's time, and then both these satellites will autonomously dock with each other, and once they dock, they'll test their onboard systems. After testing their onboard systems, these satellites will completely grow apart, and then they will undock and they'll perform their respective roles of imaging the Earth.
In what is said to be the worst telecom hack in US history, the US has added a 9th telecom company to the list of entities compromised by a massive Chinese-linked cyber espionage operation. The White House saying the hacking operation gave officials in Beijing access to private texts and phone conversations of an unknown number of Americans, including people associated with the campaign of former Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris, President-elect Donald Trump, and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance. A China-backed hacking group called Salt Typhoon is said to be behind the attack, while US telecom giants AT&T and Verizon have confirmed the breach. Other telecom companies are yet to confirm the attack. The additional 9th company was uncovered after the federal government issued guidance to telecoms detailing the Chinese techniques and how to spot them on their networks. The hackers reportedly also accessed systems used by the US government for court-authorized wiretaps. Wiretaps are used to secretly monitor and record communications for investigative purposes. The US believes this might have allowed China to identify their agents or informants who are under surveillance, enabling them to evade detection. Early this month, it was revealed that a large number of Americans' call record metadata had been stolen by the same hacking group. Call record metadata can simply be described as the who, what, when, and where of phone calls. It's a record of who placed the call to whom and how long the phone call lasted. Although the content of the call is not recorded, but even without the content, call record metadata, especially when captured in bulk, can actually reveal details about a person's life, work, and intimate relationships. In fact, Salt Typhoon has compromised critical infrastructure of companies from other nations as well, heightening concerns over the global implications of the attacks. On December 3, cybersecurity agencies from the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK issued joint guidance to address the Salt Typhoon breach. The report outlined recommended practices for organizations to mitigate the impact of this and any other possible future attacks. Centralized login, consistent monitoring, enforcing multi-factor authentication across all access points, adequate funding and staffing of IT and cybersecurity departments to ensure better protection and also ensure the inventory of devices and firmware are up to date. Meanwhile, China has refuted the allegations, saying that they are unaware of the attack. Instead, they have accused the US of fabricating false claims to frame China, adding that such actions hinder global cybersecurity cooperation. Switching focus for now, concerns over the cryptocurrency market's legitimacy and whether it actually conforms to the Sharia law in the UAE have risen in recent months. This is in response to the industry's meteoric expansion in the Gulf nation. Our next report tries to delve into better understanding the contrasting stance of experts as far as this debate is concerned. Take a look.
Currently, cryptos are neither halal nor haram, according to the country's Sharia position, which means they are not recommended. This comes when crypto proponents have dubbed Bitcoin as the most Islamic form of money ever invented. The support for cryptos came during a conference in Abu Dhabi, as reported by the Halal Times. While the debate has divided views even among scholars, the Sharia stance is clear. Cryptos are not recommended. Experts weigh in on the confusion about how to classify cryptos. A scholar from the UAE Fatwa Council told Halal Times, "Our current position is tawakkuf. We can't say it is halal or haram, but we say it is better not to engage in it. It is a complicated issue because there are various ways you can analyze crypto currently." The scholar stressed that the speculative fervor is the reason for cryptos not being recommended by the council. He said, because its prices fluctuate and at quite large amounts overnight, so people are just jumping onto it, perceiving it as an investment. He added that while it has not been officially accepted as money by the Fatwa Council, that may change if the government does so. Crypto advocates say Muslims are missing out on digital currency's revolutionary impact. According to financial expert, Sharia advisor, and anti-money laundering expert Arish Ehsan, globally, governments are showing a growing interest in Bitcoin. Ehsan said in the long run, all governments will have some degree of influence over cryptos. Although several investors have earned substantial wealth through crypto trading, many others have incurred severe losses too. Many also argue that Bitcoin is more halal than fiat currency. The reason is that real currency is generated only upon the issuance of fresh loans and hence issued with riba, prohibited monetary transactions in Islam. In response, Arish told Halal Times, negative fallout of a flawed banking process has nothing to do with any specific currency or perceived currency. It would have a bearing on the economy as a whole and affect all currencies that are interchangeable for that matter. He, however, warned that people should know the flip side of the coin to make informed choices instead of getting intertwined and targeted by their FOMO, fear of missing out. However, according to speakers at a Bitcoin conference, the OG token is just another example of how Islam allows the exchange of anything seen as money at its spot value. Haris Irfan, CEO of Cordoba Capital Markets, addressing a Bitcoin conference, said, "But people often misinterpret this hadith thinking that these are the only types of money that should be exchanged. He added, in fact, what it says is that things that are perceived as money should be exchanged hand in hand at spot value, not at an interpreted future value. Separately, legal advisor Abdul Rahman Al-Nabhan said that crypto's legal status in the Gulf nation is complex. Currently, individuals are free to use and mine cryptocurrencies in the UAE. The central bank, though, has not passed any legislation that would govern or limit commercial crypto projects. Legal advisor Abdul Rahman Al-Nabhan says, and I quote him, "The absence of regulation does not imply it is absolutely permissible because entities still require authorization from relevant authorities to engage in any commercial activities."
Parts of North India bracing for a freezing start to the new year as cold wave conditions intensify. The Met Department, in fact, has predicted severe cold wave conditions in Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan from 30th of December to 2nd of January. The state of Uttar Pradesh is going to witness rain and thunderstorms, while western and eastern Uttar Pradesh will experience a significant drop in temperatures by up to 6 degrees as rain clears up. Dry weather is expected from Sunday onwards. Light to moderate snowfall will continue in parts of Himachal Pradesh, including Chamba, Kulu, Spiti, with heavy snow expected in some parts until 29th of December. Cold wave and dense fog will follow from 30th December. Kashmir is struggling with the season's heaviest snowfall. Road, rail and air traffic remain disrupted, including the Jammu-Srinagar highway and flight operations in Srinagar. Delhi recorded over 41 millimeters of rain in a single day, the highest since 1923. The IMD has issued an orange alert for dense fog on Sunday, followed by a yellow alert for the next 2 days. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, they say. But when it comes to Greece, the Greek pretty much seem to be flouting their own rules. How is that, you ask? Even 14 years after Greece officially banned smoking in indoor public places, people can still be spotted lighting up in closed settings. The question is, when the European Union urged countries to extend smoking bans to outdoor spaces to achieve a tobacco-free generation by 2040, what does all of this really mean? No points for guessing what Greece said. Let's tell you more about this. The current health minister has said that Greece would not extend smoking restrictions in line with the European Union recommendation during a December meeting of European health ministers in a vote on the non-binding measure. Greece abstained along with Germany. You see, Greece and smoking share a strange connection to the point of it getting unhealthy, quite literally. Just last year, a health profile of Greece from the European Commission reported that about a fifth of the country's deaths in 2019 could be attributed to tobacco smoking, including both direct and second-hand. But that has done practically little to curb smoking practices among the population. While some might do this out of sheer habit, many also possibly think they could simply get away with it. According to the European Commission, more than a third of Greeks regularly indulge in smoking, which makes it second in the European Union after Bulgaria to take up smoking among Europeans. To tackle this, tougher measures were introduced, including banning smoking in all indoor public areas in 2010, post which the country's statistics agency has recorded a significant drop in smoking. However, the ban got widely flouted in the days that followed. In 2019, a law mandated fines of 100 euros, which is roughly about $105, to be charged from those caught smoking indoors. And when it came to businesses and enterprises, the same fine amount rose. And a complaints hotline was also set up. What's more, the health minister of Greece saying that indoor smoking has been stamped out altogether. However, as per experts, it's simply not enough. And what's more challenging is to unseat deeply ingrained attitudes and a culture that basically supports smoking, as well as authorities not placing stricter measures to nip it in the bud. So what is the way out? The solution pretty much lies in the problem itself. Experts suggesting one has to start with changing the very mindset where more people are educated about the perils of smoking and its ill effects, including its impact on one's life expectancy. And for that, authorities need to come together and collaborate with the civilians to actually practice what they preach by following the rules of indoor smoking bans to the T. Kamya Karthikeyan, a 17-year-old girl from Mumbai in India, has etched her name in history books, and how she has become the youngest female in the world to scale 7 highest summits across 7 continents. What a remarkable feat. The 17-year-old adventurer has conquered Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa, Mount Elbrus in Russia,